I'm delighted to be with you here again today. It's Mensurate, and in today's session, I'm going to be addressing a question that was asked from something that I did yesterday, finding happiness. And the question from one of the viewers was, how do you find and how do you study yourself? And so in today's session, I want to share some ideas and some thoughts on how you can find yourself. Now, at the temple at the Apollo in Delphi are inscribed two words: know thyself. Know thyself. Very powerful words. Know thyself. And the great philosophers and the great theologians and the great scientists of our generation and of time past spent a lot of time trying to understand the human being and who we really are. Now, you and I, in order to find ourselves, we need to know who we are. That begins the journey. And I think personally that that journey is what creates fulfillment in life. The great writer says that I have come that you might have life and you might have life abundantly. Now, that coming refers to awareness. Awareness of I've come into you, I've brought you awareness of what is around you, and now you can start to live the life that you were born to live. Now, it's great to know yourself, but I believe you shouldn't just know who you are, you must also move one step further and then be yourself. And so for the next few minutes, I'll share some ideas and some life experiences and a little bit of what I know and how I found myself. Now, all of us are on a journey, individualized as we might be, and we have to find out who we are along this journey. It takes time and it takes effort. It's not something you stumble on. Now, let's start with the first part of today's session, which is about knowing yourself. I'm going to try in my humble way to address three key questions. The first is going to be why. The second is going to be what. And the final will be how. Well, the why do I need to know myself? What do I need to do to know myself? And how can I learn more about myself? Now, in starting with the why, I think it's for one simple reason. One word. Self-awareness. Self-awareness. I believe if we're all aware of who we are, then we can live the life that we really want to live. Using myself as an example, I studied and I practiced engineering for about 30 years. Worked in London, great firm, got to a level of position in various companies that very few would ever get to. Worked with great architects and contractors and people build great buildings. But it wasn't until a few years ago that I realized that it wasn't my life's calling. It wasn't my purpose. It wasn't what I was born to do. I did it well. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't what I was born to do. Now, what I also found was in looking back, all of those years of working in engineering for more than 15 years, I operated from an area of weakness. And the reason was because I wasn't operating from my strengths. I was trying to be someone that I thought I had to be. I wasn't aware of who I was. And so the whole purpose of trying to understand and find yourself comes down to one word: self-awareness. We all have to be aware of who we are. Now, in connecting self-awareness, there's something that you should understand as well. We're all uniquely different, and that is something we should celebrate rather than something we should be ashamed of. Now, self-awareness is not there to make you feel less of who and what society thinks you should be. Self-awareness is simply there to remind you of your true nature, of your true identity. So, you want to know yourself. You want to know yourself simply so you can understand who you really are. Now, why is self-awareness important and why is knowing yourself important? This is what I found. Looking back over the last number of years, what I've come to the realization, and I'll talk about this in more detail later on, what I've come to the realization is this: greatness, success, happiness, good fortune, prosperity, good health, joy, peace comes when you know yourself. Now, what does that mean? Now, I started studying myself a number of years ago, and I came to a very interesting discovery. All of us have been taught in the formal way. If you were taught the way I was, then you were taught how to read and write. You went through the academic route and perhaps the professional route. So you have perhaps a sound understanding about how to use your senses. Now, we have 5 senses: sight, sound, touch, smell, taste. So we can perceive our environment, we can relate to people, we can relate to things. However, the education system was incomplete because there's another part of us that we didn't learn about. It's called personal development, and that teaches you about you. In understanding yourself, you recognize that there is something called your higher faculties: imagination, perception, intuition, memory, will, reason. Now, those 6 higher faculties, I should have said, not 5. Those 6 higher faculties is where all greatness awaits. That's where happiness resides. That's where prosperity begins. And the reason for that is just taking one of the senses. Sight. Sight shows you things as they are. When you look through your eyes, we call that sight. Imagination shows you things as they could be. So, in understanding yourself and in becoming self-aware, you've got to recognize that you have to use your higher faculties, imagination, and use that imagination and let it supplement your sight. So, knowing yourself begins with understanding who you are, what you have. Now, one of the tragedies that I've found, the more I've studied people, is a lot of us will get to the end of our lives. And this inspires me, this motivates me to learn more and try to do more. I have this picture. Now, this might never happen, but it's my mind. I have this picture that someday we're all going to stand and look back on life, and we're going to be so disappointed at how much of an experience we failed to live, because we were conditioned into how people wanted us to live. That we let all the greatness, all the genius, all the love go unused. And more than anything, that we came back after this journey with all of the gifts that we were given that we should have left for the generations to come. So you start the journey of studying yourself and knowing yourself just so you're self-aware, so you can understand that all of what you want is within you. It's not out there. No one will make you successful. The great writer says, you will make your way successful. Study the laws, study the principles. In other words, study yourself. And if you obey the principles and obey the laws, you will make your way successful. Not the government, not the environment, not your mom, not your dad, you. Love is within. You don't go to find love without, you find it within. Success is within. Greatness is lying dormant within. Prosperity, good fortune are all within you. So you begin the journey of studying yourself so you recognize who you are and what you've been given. Now, what do you then study? That's the question. If you're trying to find out more about yourself, what do you study? I think one of the things you should study is what makes up your personality. And I found that the more I started to study myself, the more I recognized that I understood people better. came down to one reason. You and I are essentially the same. In me resides something that is in you. There is only one mind. Different arrangements, one mind. We have 7 billion people alive today, but we do not have 7 billion minds. We have one mind with 7 billion arrangements. If you bring a piece of metal that is magnetic, and you bring another piece of metal that is not magnetic, the only difference in the two metals are the arrangements of the internal molecules. So, the great writer says, "Be ye not conformed to the world, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." Go back and get your mind back to how it should always function. Go back to the original mind. So, you start studying yourself in terms of what's, by understanding your personality. Now I want to share what I discovered when I started studying myself. I found that I'm not what you think I am. I'm not what I wear. I'm not what I have. I'm not what I eat. I'm not where I live. I found, interestingly, that there were 3 paths to who I am. At the highest level of my personality is something called spirit. Now, this is not a religious session. I don't think I would qualify to even talk about that. But at the highest level of my personality is something called spirit. At the middle section is something called the mind. At the lowest level of my personality is my physical body. So, what I have and what I wear is a garment. You're not black or white. You're not male, female by gender. The true part of you, your true nature, is spirit. And I found in studying myself that my spirit is perfect. That there is nothing I can do to improve my spirit. It's perfect. But how I use the spirit in the physical plane, yeah, you might say I'm not using it in the right way. My spirit is perfect. My body has limitations. Some people don't like the size of their head. They may not like their smile. They don't like their teeth. They don't like their height. They're too small. They're too fat. They're too skinny. That's all physical plane. And this is what I found, that for so many years, I thought that I was my physical body. And so I was limited. Just in the same way that if you had a table designed to take perhaps 10 kilograms of weight, if you place 100 kilograms on that table, the table will collapse. So on the physical plane, we have limitations. Now those limitations, some are self-imposed, some we can't change. But you and I have to do something interesting. We have to rise above our physical personality and choose to see ourselves at the spiritual level. In between the physical and the spiritual is a mind. You and I have to use it. Now, in understanding and knowing yourself, you have to learn how to live on those 3 levels of your personality. Very few of us have been trained and taught how to do the spiritual and the mental. We know how to live on the physical plane. It's not my intention to talk about the physical plane. I want to talk about the spiritual and the mental. Now, on the spiritual level of your personality is understanding that there are things you have to do to experience that consciousness of spirit. The first and the most important is love. You and I are love. At our core, we are love. And love has to love. And that means that when you interact with people, you see them as yourself. Next, we must have purpose in what we do every day. We must have purpose in how we live. We must have purpose in how we interact with people. And the reason is because we're here for a reason. So, at the highest level of our personality is that part of us that wants to fulfill what it's here to do. Next to that is happiness. How do we find happiness? But that comes in various ways. But here is the point. You live on the spiritual level of your personality when you're experiencing gratitude, happiness, love, benevolence, and a purposeful driven life. Now, at the mental level of your personality is recognizing this gift that you've been given, called the mind. William James said that the greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. In other words, you can renew your mind and you can change your life. So, think about this. Whatever you have achieved so far in life, wherever you might find yourself, recognize that that's self-created. In other words, the results that you have today are evidence of how you used your mind in the past. Your attitude is comprised of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. However, your thoughts begin the creation process. If you look around where you are now, walk down any high street, everything you see that is tangible was created by someone's thoughts. It began as an idea, as a thought. And so, whatever you can conceive in your mind, if you believe it, you can achieve it. You have to work to get it, but you can achieve it. So, the creation process begins in the mind. It begins within. So, knowing yourself comes very, very handy in that you have an understanding about what you can do. Some people believe in faith. Some people believe in destiny. Some people believe in good luck. Some people also believe that they are victims of life. I have a different philosophy. I believe that there are no victims in life. We're all volunteers. However, I believe we'll all have equal opportunity because we have the same mind. We have to renew it and then we have to use it well. Now, in using your mind, it comes down to how do you use your thoughts? What are you thinking about? What are you creating? Mind and speech, and by speech I'm referring to your internal dialogue, self-talk. But also by speech I'm talking about spoken words. What are you saying to yourself every single day? Now, if we sat down in a movie room and we simply had a screen, and on the screen we had pictures or motion pictures of all of the thoughts in your mind, but not thoughts about other people, but thoughts about you. Would those thoughts be thoughts that you would look at and you would say, yes, this is loving, this is kind, and this is gentle? So I found for most people, we don't know ourselves because we spend a lot of our time using our mind and we use our thoughts in a destructive way. We're sadly not our best coach and cheerleaders. We tend to be our best critics. There's a place and a time for critiquing perhaps your decisions and your actions, but not to the point where you are constantly beating yourself up. So you start to learn about yourself by understanding the power of your words, the power of your thoughts. Thoughts are creative. Your thoughts are creating. Your spoken words are creating. And contrary to what people say, your spoken words and your thoughts do not move into your past. They move into your future because they are creative. In that mind of yours is your imagination. You've got to learn how to use it. Now, one of the things I found in studying myself as well is that I have a self-image. I have a picture of how I see myself. And that image of how I see myself is planted in what's called the subconscious part of my mind. Some people call it the lower mind, the superego. The superego could be a word you like. I just call it the mind. But that self-image controls and regulates my results. Now here is the key, but also here is the point. You and I cannot outperform our self-image. We just can't. Our self-image sets the boundary of our performance in all areas of life. So you want to know yourself so you can understand what picture you have about yourself. Because to change your results, you have to change that image. And that image resides in your mind, in your subconscious mind. So studying yourself is important so you can understand how to change your destiny. Some people are waiting for the economy to change. Some people are waiting for maybe a life partner to arrive. Some people are waiting for to win the lottery. For things to change in your life, you have to change. But the way you change is you change the image you have within. That's how it all begins. So, at the mid-level of your personality is your mind. By study, you recognize what you have. Now, I started a number of minutes ago and I talked about the 6 parts of your higher faculty. All of your higher faculties are parts of your mind. Imagination, intuition, perception, reason, memory, will. Each and every one of those is what leads you to having the experience that you want to experience in life. Now let me talk about each of them very briefly so you can understand the power. Imagination. Imagination is called the power and wisdom. We are the operating power. We operate the power by creating thoughts. We place those thoughts in the imagination and it goes to work. And imagination creates reality. You don't have to wish, you simply have to think about what you want, create a picture of what you want, put in your imagination, believe that it can become reality, expect it to become a reality, and in a unique way that you don't know, your imagination takes what you've given it and it starts to bring about all of the right steps and circumstances and people and leads you towards the fulfillment of your dream or of your goal, of your vision. Perception deals with perspective. And for many of us, our perception is our reality. But that doesn't mean it's correct and that doesn't mean it's right. Because perception deals with how you see things. You bring a cup with half its contents filled with water. One person says it's half full. The other says it's half empty. Same cup, same contents. What's the difference? Perspective. For one person, they perhaps see the optimistic part of the cup. The others see the pessimistic part of the cup. So it's not about being right or wrong. It's simply about having the ability to hold 2 opposing ideas in the mind and still retain the ability to function. And I would normally say your perspective of life is either limiting you or restricting you from living the life you want, but you could also be in the other group whereby your perspective of life is the advantage that you have and is what's creating happiness and joy in your life. So, to understand how to develop your perspective, you have to understand yourself. Then we talk about will. Will is simply focus. You have an idea, you burn that idea into your mind's eye, you impress it upon yourself, it becomes an all-consuming desire. You don't look to the left and you don't look to the right. You focus on what you're trying to do, and that focus leads you into creating success. Now, I call focus flourish in one course of activity until you're successful. You flourish in one course of commitment until you're successful. That's focus. But how do you learn how to focus? It begins by understanding how to apply and use your mental faculties and then allow your body to follow your mind. Now, I'm not going to talk about the rest because that might take some time. But the point of this is to say, once you understand the spiritual level of your personality and you now understand the mental level of your personality, it becomes a lot easier to live on the physical plane, but also more importantly, it becomes easier to adapt to the challenges and setbacks that you experience on the physical plane. A lot of people have the challenge of depression. And most people say, I don't think life is worth living, because they have a number of reasons. And I can understand the emotional, maybe, experience intellectually. I can understand that. I may not really know what it feels like, because obviously we can't feel what another person feels. We can relate to the feeling through our experiences, or perhaps just through knowledge. But here is the point. I find that if I look back at my journey and some of the challenges that I faced, and even moments when I've gotten to the point where I was close to being depressed, I found that the reason that I got myself to that state was as a result of ignorance, a lack of wisdom in understanding that I was operating at the physical level, and there are limitations on the physical level. And all I had to do was increase my understanding and my awareness of my other two personalities, recognize the power of my mind, understand what I could do using my mind and my thoughts. But more importantly, recognize that everything that I was experiencing was self-created. I was creating in my mind what I was experiencing, but I didn't understand the power of the mind. And so that ignorance kept me in a limiting place for a number of years. But even I had lack of understanding and awareness that there was a spiritual level of my personality and a level of consciousness I had to live in to experience the good life. Now, once you've dealt with the what, which is what we've been talking about, what do you need to do? Let's talk about the how. How do you know yourself? How do you go about that journey? Time and study is required if you want to get to know yourself. You have to invest time, and you have to be patient and study. And so here is my recommendation. Every day, recognize that you are like a farmer. A farmer sows a seed in the ground, and at the end of the sowing season, he or she hopes and waits patiently for the harvest season. At the end of the harvest season, the farmer doesn't eat all of the corn, seed corn. The farmer recognizes that in order to have another harvest, they have to take a portion of what they have just harvested and put it back in the ground. Now, you and I get 24 hours every single day as seed, time seed. But you have to reinvest a portion of your time back into the soil so that you can create and become the person you were born to be. And so one of the first things you have to do if you want to get to know yourself is dedicate a portion of your time every day for study. I normally recommend between 5% and 10% of your time every day for personal development and growth. This is equivalent to approximately 1.5 or 2.5 hours per day. Now, for most people, it's difficult to achieve. I know that. I know what it means to have a busy schedule and have a family, and you don't have the time. So here is my recommendation based on how I was able to achieve this. You don't have to let go of something. You don't have to change your lifestyle. You don't have to alter how you live every day to achieve this. You simply have to be more efficient in how you use your time. Now, what I did in my case was this. I recognized that I spent about 2 to 3 hours traveling every day to work and from work. And I travel normally by public transportation. If you live in London, you just simply take a train. It's much quicker. So what I decided to do was spend half of my travel time listening to something educational, something inspiring, something motivational, something informative, rather than simply watching entertainment or listening to entertainment all the way through. So I tend to say to people that there's something called the EE ratio, the ratio of entertainment to education. So my recommendation is, if you want to study yourself, You can achieve that 5 to 10% of your time every day by simply making a decision that you will spend half of your travel time studying. Now, you may not be able to read a book. You could simply listen to something audio. You can watch, if you can, maybe a video, a seminar, a webinar, but you can invest some of your travel time. Now, if you're like me and you were spending roughly between 2 and 3 hours going to and from work, half of that time will be between 1 and 1.5 hours. So you see, you don't have to change your lifestyle. Another way to do this is if you have a habit of regular exercise, you go to the gym, you go for a run. Likewise, you can spend half of the time maybe listening to something, a podcast, something informative, something that can teach you a little bit about you, something that can help you become your best self. It's all about trying to be your best self, remember? But time and study is needed. So I would also say, if you go for a run, maybe halfway through you listen to something educational, and then halfway you can listen to music or something entertaining. But let it be a balance. You have to invest and see yourself as an investor. Now, Warren Buffett, who is considered the greatest investor of our time, was asked the question. He was asked, what's the best investment anyone can make? And he said that the best investment you can make is the investment you make in yourself, because it will always pay the best return. So, in using your time for study, don't look at it as though you're wasting time. See that as an investment in you, trying to get to know this greatness that lies within you, trying to get to know this potential that you have, which is unlimited. And the more you study, the more you find opportunities that now can create the freedom and the happiness that you want. So the first thing is time and study will be required. Now, you will also need to allocate some of your money to study. I'll let you decide what percentage you believe is right, but I personally think a portion of your income every single month should be set aside to your personal growth and development, and find ways to increase your wisdom. Now, recognize something, that I think two of the most important things that we need to have a great life is education and motivation, or inspiration and motivation. You have to be educated. One great writer said, if you're an idiot and you get educated or motivated, then you become a motivated idiot. So he said, you have to combine education and motivation. Because similarly, if you're very, very educated and you don't have any motivation, then you're simply an educated derelict. You have so much knowledge and you're unwilling to make a change. It paralyzes you. So it's about combining both. And so wisdom comes by taking knowledge, which comes from study. You take information, you study the information, it becomes knowledge. You find ways and strategies of how you can apply what you've learned. The more you study and think about using your reasoning faculty, you start to increase your level of understanding and awareness. And as you increase your understanding and awareness, that encourages you to take action. By taking action, you arrive at a place of wisdom. So wisdom is simply the application of what you've studied and what you know. So you have to spend time and money on studying yourself. Now that is dealing with knowing yourself. But how do you become yourself? Let's assume you have studied yourself a little bit and you have a better understanding about who you are. But how do you become your true self? Let me start by saying this, that there are a number of factors that control who we are, and that have controlled who we were in the past. The first are the events that have happened in your life, your environment, the relationships you have around you, in other words, the associations you have, your dreams and goals, the decisions you've made, and in many cases, your habits, what you do daily. All of those combined control your results. They control who you are. So in studying yourself, one of the things that I found when I studied myself is I came to the realization that the picture that I had about me all these years was not completely true. I realized that I had more potential in me than I thought I had. I looked at myself and I realized that I had a purpose and I had a calling, and everyone else has a purpose and a calling, and everyone else has unlimited potential. So the question I asked myself was this: why am I not achieving my potential? And that was a very difficult question. But as I pondered on the question over and over again, I came to the realization that there was something that was restricting me from becoming my best self. And that something was me. That something was my self-image. So to become yourself, you begin the journey by reconstructing the ideal image of who you want to be. You reconstruct your self-image, and then you create new goals that allow you move in the direction of who you want to be. So let's deal with both of them separately now. Your self-image. What is your self-image? Well, self-image is simply a picture. It's a portrait of who you think you are. It's a portrait of what you believe you can do. Every one of us has a self-image. Every one of us, however, is born with an empty or blank canvas. Now, just like this is blank, you and I, we're born as a blank canvas. But at the point of birth, whoever is responsible for us, the factors that I described earlier on, environment, events, relationships, people, decisions, we start to paint on this canvas. We're painting a picture of who we think we are. Interestingly, before we get to the point of wanting to paint or being able to paint, someone else has painted the portrait. In most cases, it's our parents, it's our siblings, it's our friends, our associations. You and I, we begin life with a blank canvas. We, however, inherit our self-image. And in many cases, those pictures we have of ourselves are based on other people's limitations. They're based on other people's experiences, good, bad, or indifferent. Now recognize something. I love my father very much. I love my mother very much. They're amazing. They are still amazing people. But they could only give me what they had. So your self-image is based on what they could give you. I'm not suggesting or saying that it's right or wrong. I'm saying, is it really you? Now look at the results in every area of your life. Very quickly. If the results in every area of your life is not consistent with your desires, then there's a disconnect. That disconnect is testament to the fact that your beliefs need to be expanded. It's evidence to the fact that your self-image is limiting you. So one of the first things we have to do is reconstruct our self-image. Now this took me years to realize. It wasn't until my 30s that I started to really think about myself and who I wanted to be and how I wanted to live my life, not based on other people's standards, based on what I wanted to do. And I found that in every area of my life, I had this self-limiting belief. Now, I was raised by two great parents. We were spiritually wealthy. We had gratitude. We had good philosophies about living. We had happiness at home. We shared, we loved, but we were financially poor. Now, I want to show you the power of your self-image and what one limitation can do to you. Being raised poor meant that we were raised with flawed philosophies about wealth. We saw wealth as something that was not for us. We saw poverty as something that should be embraced and celebrated. After all, about 97% of the population are relatively poor. And with this flawed philosophy, we said that God must love a lot of poor people because there are more poor people than there are wealthy people. There were scriptures and words that we use, like it's more difficult for a person to get into the kingdom of heaven. It's more difficult for a camel to get into the kingdom of heaven than for a rich person to get in. We said money was the root of all evil. Now, all of these words became beliefs. They were re-emphasized and repeated to the point where there was a negative self-concept in my mind. This self-image that I had was distorted, whereby I saw money as evil. So, even going into my early 20s working, I found every time I made money, I would spend it all. After all, why would you want to have something and hold on to something that is evil? You want to get rid of it. Now, all of this is happening subconsciously. I'm not really thinking, it's just happening because I've been programmed. So your self-image programs you and controls your attitude, and that's the reason why I said, you and I cannot outperform our self-image. We just can't. Now think about this. If you were traveling from London to New York, for example, it's quite a distance by flight. So every plane has a pilot and they have an onboard avionics system. They program in the destination. There is a flight path and a flight plan. As soon as the plane takes off ground, the pilot goes into autopilot, allows the plane to fly itself. It's locked into the GPS coordinates. It understands the flight path. Now, as the plane flies from London to New York, depending on the weather and the climate, it might go through turbulence, winds and shear forces. And in some cases, depending on the strength of the winds, it might deviate the plane from its flight path. It might deviate it slightly. The plane automatically will correct its course. Most planes, for that reason, are normally about 95% off course. Just for external reasons, there are things, forces that are affecting the flight path. But the plane has an onboard system, an automatic system. That system will keep course correcting, and that system will ensure that no matter how much the plane deviates, it brings the plane back to its flight path to ensure that it arrives at the destination based on the flight path. Each of us has an internal control system, just like a plane. That control system is called your self-image. So, for example, let's say you have a limitation internally about what you can do. Maybe you don't believe you can earn more than £1,000 per month. You've always had that belief. You go out and you do a great job and you're paid £1,500, but that's deviated from that concept you have about yourself. You might be on that salary for a few months, but because your automatic system is continuing to course correct, you find that you come down to that same level you were always on. So you and I have to do something. We have to change the self-image. We have to go back to the canvas. We have to get a new canvas and we have to start repainting who we want to be. We want to paint a picture of someone who is beautiful, someone who is loving, someone who is kind, someone who is prosperous, someone who can do all things. And then we want to believe that picture. So the starting point is create your self-image, recreate your self-image. You might have to pull down all of the foundations, all of the buildings that were built, used to build your life, and you rebuild who you want to be. Just imagine. Robert Schuller said, "What one thing would you dare to dream if you knew you could not fail?" Just think about that statement. What one thing would you dare to dream if you knew you could not fail? And here is the point. All things are possible if you believe. But in order to believe, you've got to see yourself right. And that begins by changing your self-image. How do you do that? Sit down, decide what you want. And in deciding what you want, try not to judge using your senses. Use your imagination. Forget the possibility of it being real. Just answer the question, what do I want? Now, I've found if I've spoken to 10 people, 9 out of 10 people are not living the life they want. Most people are living the life that they think they could have. 9 out of 10 people are not living where they want to live. They're living where they can afford. None of the people are not in the relationships they want. They're in relationships that they've settled for. So we've been conditioned in such a way that we cannot even say what we really want. But to create your new self-image, you have to let go. Just fantasize and dream like a child would, and ask yourself the question and answer the question very honestly. Assuming money was no object, imagine that you had a magic wand, or you had a genie that you could rub a lamp and the genie appears and gives you anything that you want. What would you wish for? Now let that be a beginning point to creating your self-image, and just write it down. But start putting together words and pictures of who you want to be. You want to be happy, you want to be prosperous, you want to be joyful, you want to be kind, you want to be loving, you want to have money. Sit down and decide what you want. That's how you start. Now once you've decided what you want, you've started the process. Now there are a few steps you have to take. Repetition is how we create changes in our life. If you're in your 30s, for example, creating an idea about who you want to be just once and spending 1 hour, it's not going to automatically erase this self-image that you've had for 30 years. You've got to understand the law of displacement. How do you get light to come into a room? If you walk into a room and there are no curtains, there is no window, and it's entirely pitch black, how do you bring light into the space? Very simple. You switch, you just hit the light switch. The light displaces the darkness. Now, that doesn't mean the darkness goes away, it's just been displaced. So you and I have to keep renewing our mind and reaffirming that new image until we get to a place whereby our dominant thought is no longer this self-limiting beliefs we have about ourselves, but now we have this new image we've created about prosperity and happiness and peace and joy and fulfillment and inspiration. To do that, I want to give you some strategies. They're very simple, you can do them every day. The first is called mental movies. You've probably been to a movie before, but this time around, imagine you're in your home, and in your home is a screen room. Imagine yourself walking into the screen room. There is just one seat there and there's a large screen. Imagine yourself in your mind's eye sitting down and the screen comes on. And what you see on the screen is the future that you want based on this image you've created. So you allow yourself in your mind to play mental movies of the life you want. And the more you see that, what you're doing from that place is you're using your sensory faculties. You're getting emotionally involved with that picture you have. Now that's how imagination creates reality. You want to create a feeling. Then you want to think from those pictures, not think of. Now this is the difference between goal setting. For so many years, a lot of people have been taught about how to set goals and the law of attraction. And they say, think of what you want. For that reason, many people do not achieve what they want. You have to learn how to think from what you want. And you do this in 2 ways. First, by using mental movies. You see yourself through your mind's eye living that life. Mental movies. And you keep replaying this. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes. You do in the morning, you do in the evening. But what you're doing here is you're re-emphasizing and renewing your mind with this new picture of you. Now, what is faith? Some say faith is substance of things hoped for and evidence of things not seen. Great definition, it all makes sense. You hope for something, the evidence is in your mind, you can feel it. That's faith. But also faith is loyalty to the unseen. In other words, that which you've seen in your mind, you believe it. If you believe what you see in your mind, that's faith. Now, the expression and the highest level of your faith is expressed by expectation, by taking action. So you create a picture of who you want to be, and then you live into that picture as though it were already real. So many years ago, Arnold Schwarzenegger was in Austria, and he looked at a magazine and he saw some great bodybuilders. He fell in love with bodybuilding. He said to his mom and dad, I want to be a bodybuilder. I want to go to the United States. And at this time, it was like heresy. Just the thought of that alone was seen as not even worth considering. He didn't have the means to achieve it. The question is, how did he become a 7-time Mr. Olympia, achieving his dream, become the #1 box office star in Hollywood, even though he had a really funny accent and he had a massive build with so much muscles? And how did he also become a governor of the state of California? Now, he was asked a question along that journey when he started the new pursuit to become a movie actor. He had succeeded in his first dream in bodybuilding. He wanted to become a movie star, and his first film was a disaster. He failed. And an inquisitive reporter asked him a question. Seeing that you've left bodybuilding and you don't have the physical looks, you don't have the accents, you don't have the knowledge about acting, and you've just done your first movie and you failed, what are you going to do now? What's next for you? He said, I'm going to become the #1 box office star in Hollywood, which at the time just seemed like a joke. Now, the reporter asked the question, how do you intend to achieve this? Now, here is the most important part of the story. He said, I'm going to do the same thing that I did in bodybuilding. I'm going to create a picture, an image of who I want to be, and then I'm going to live into that picture as though it were already real. So, create a picture of who you want to be. Put that picture in your imagination, and then live in the feeling that that which you see in your imagination is already yours. So the mental movie is a process, is a way of getting you to sit somewhere and watch your life. See yourself interacting with people in the future, living the life you want to live based on your new self-image. Now, the second way is what we call mental rehearsal. In other words, with mental movies, you're observing. You're simply observing using your sensory faculty of sight. With mental rehearsal, you're doing. In other words, see yourself living that life. What would you say to people? How are you interacting with people? From your perspective and how you see the world, see yourself in that future interacting with people. Maybe some people are saying, I love your new house, I love your new car, I love your family, you look good, I love your business. But see yourself living that life and observe from that perspective how other people are relating to you. That is how you live from, not. And that's how you live, by thinking from rather than thinking of what you want. So mental movies and mental rehearsal are two ways to reaffirm and strengthen this new self-image you've created. But don't let it stop there. There's something called the power of suggestion. Specifically, I want to talk about autosuggestion and how you can use autosuggestion to keep reaffirming who you want to be. And in autosuggestion, I want to talk about self-talk. Self-talk is not something that you do to yourself because you're delusional. Every day we're talking to ourselves. Every day. Some of us do it silently. Some of us do it knowingly. If you recorded your internal speech and dialogue every day, you will be shocked at how similar your internal dialogue is to your future. Everything you have today, you created. I know most people don't understand this and don't accept it, but we are creative beings. We create with our imagination, we create with our words and our thoughts. So self-talk is saying to yourself what you wish to become a reality in the future. It's saying to yourself what you would want someone else to say to you. So every day, based on your self-image that you've reconstructed and re-engineered, develop a number of words, 10, 15 words, and every day keep saying that and repeating that to yourself. I can do all things. I'm wonderfully and fearfully made. I'm beautiful, I'm proud, I'm a great father, I'm a great person, I'm kind. But develop words based on this new self-image you have and keep repeating it. Faith comes by hearing and hearing and hearing. How do you create a belief? Repeated dialogue in your mind. So what we want to do is displace the old self-image you have, and we do that simply by replaying in pictures, in words, in sound, that which we want to become our reality. Now, mental movies and mental rehearsal with self-talk are great, but don't just stop at self-talk. Move it to affirmations. You have to affirm yourself. Affirm yourself in the way you would really want people to affirm you. So I would say develop a habit of self-affirmation. Together with those 4 items, you can now take action. It's about doing. By thought, what you want is created. By feeling and expectation, it's sent to you. But by action, that's how you receive it. So you have to take action. So here is the best advice so far. The picture you've created, the new self-image you've created, is what I will call a vision. You have to convert that vision into what is called a goal. In other words, take that dream you have, put it in writing and give it a timeline. You want the goal to be set with a deadline so that you can see progress. Once you have your goal written down with a timeline for its achievement, you want to convert the goal into a plan. You need steps you need to take, so you need a plan to make that a reality. Once you have a plan, you have to convert your plan to a strategy. A strategy deals with the how-to. What am I going to do? Develop a strategy. Once you have a strategy, you must now convert your strategy into habits. Because what you do daily and consistently determines who you become permanently. Once you have your daily habits, then you develop around those habits a ritual, a routine. Now, what is a routine and what is a ritual? We've talked about mental movies and mental rehearsal and affirmations and taking action. Each of those are activities that can help you create a routine. So every day, for example, if you said, I'm going to spend 5 minutes first thing in the morning, going into my imagination and creating the future that I want. I'm going to spend another 5 minutes doing my mental rehearsal. I'm going to spend 2 minutes doing self-talk. I'm going to spend 1 minute doing affirmations. That is a routine. If you do that every day, consistently, for the next 100 days, now that was not a mistake. 100 days. To create a new habit, to displace an old habit, you must do consistently without letting an exception occur for 100 days. And by doing that, you form this habit and it's almost impossible to break. It displaces the old habit completely. Most people fail on their New Year's resolutions simply because they do it for 2 weeks and they see no growth. They do it for 3 weeks, no difference, no change, and they get discouraged. I can promise you of something. If you do something for 100 days consistently with focus, with attention, you will achieve what you want. That will become a new habit. So the key thing is this: the vision you have of yourself, this new self-image, you have to convert that into daily activities and a daily habit so that it becomes easy to live in a day. The self-image you have and the future you have is beautiful, is grand, but that's the future. You've got to learn to live in the now. But you live in the now because the now is life. Life is not somewhere in the future. Your lifetime is comprised of your past, your future, and your present. But your life is lived right now. Now, how do you live in the now? You simply take that future, bring it into the present by activities and habits, and you do daily and consistently what you want to experience in the future. That's a simple way of forming your self-image. So in other words, you've done the mental rehearsal, mental movies, affirmations, self-talk. Now you're taking action daily, but it doesn't end there. You must have what we call time and moments to review your performance. And so every day, you have to sit down at the end of the day and ask yourself 2 questions. What did I do right? Was I consistent with this self-image that I want? And when you start the journey, you will be off course. You might make a few mistakes. So the second question you ask yourself is, what could I have done differently? The key then is celebrate what you've done well, because celebration creates self-confidence. You want to document what you're doing well because you want to create a memory bank of your victories and your success. So when the doubts come into your mind, you can say, no, I did that 2 weeks ago and I did it well. So you want to celebrate and document what you've done right, but you want to identify what you could have done differently. And the key here is take the feedback and then course correct. Just like a plane course corrects in its flight, you have to course correct. So every day you course correct. And what you find, that by doing consistently that which you wish to experience, that a day will come when your imagination has actually become your reality. You're now living the life you once dreamed about. So, to bring everything to a close, as I summarize, we started by saying, to find yourself, you have to know yourself. But you can't just stop at knowing yourself. You also have to become yourself. The becoming process, in my experience, is where the journey is. You see, it's not what you get, it's who you become. I found in my experience that when I created a self-image of who I wanted to be in all areas of my life, I found that the destination when I got there wasn't as unique and wasn't as fun and exciting as the journey. And here is the point. Progress and growth creates fulfillment and happiness. And the journey towards who you want to be is the dance of life. That's where the art is. That's where you're getting to know and learn. You're making a mistake, you pick yourself up, you try again. You fall, you stand up, you try again. Then you look back and you're on higher ground and you say, wow, I can't believe I've journeyed that far. So the great writer says, I've been to the mountaintop and I can see the promised land. You have to create a lifestyle. You have to create your vision in such a way that, yes, you want to get to the mountaintop, but you want to enjoy the experience as you go along. And that experience might be pulling others along the way. That experience might be just living in every moment, living in the now. Now, I hope that's been useful. Allow me to close with a few statements. It's incredibly difficult to change yourself. I found for myself, particularly, that the obstacle that faced me always was me. I had paradigms and habits that restricted me from change. I had been conditioned as to how to think. And so every time I tried to do something different to what I had been taught how to do, I found that there was pain, there was discomfort. But I consoled myself with the knowledge and with the understanding that the beliefs I had and the image I had about myself hadn't created the life that I wanted. And so I simply said to myself, well, give it a go. All you have nothing to lose. Be open to new ideas and new ways of living. And if it doesn't work, you can go back to what you've always known. And so I want to suggest that you think about doing the same thing. A lot of what I've shared today, for some of you, is slightly different to what you know. And I don't think that's meant to be good or meant to be bad. William Shakespeare said, nothing is either right or wrong, but our thinking makes it so. But I'll leave this with you. Take some of the ideas that I've shared and perhaps study them. Ask yourself one simple question. Can this idea, can this new piece of information, can this knowledge help me achieve my true heart's desire? If the answer is yes, then try it. If the answer is no, discard it. You have my permission. Remember, advice is freely given, so choose what is right for you. Now, I want to wish you the best of luck, whatever you choose to do. It's been a pleasure. God bless.